Makes sense, yeah. Let's listen to a little bit of the beginning of Prayer for the Innocent. Actually didn't hear the very beginning of the piece because it actually starts with 6 notes in the solo violin, and then continues from there.
Sort of a sigh.
Yeah. This work is influenced by many different styles of music, types of music. Renaissance music in one place, right? Middle Eastern music. There are also some very interesting effects in this piece. For example, you have the players tapping on their instruments. Were you after a specific sound? And if so, is that sound when they're tapping on the instruments, is that influenced by any specific percussion instrument?
Well, you got the answer yesterday. It is. It's the sound of the tabla, this Indian drum that has both non-pitch and pitch elements. So it would go like it has that. It can have that just non-pitch, but it can also have these glissandos. I find it to be very expressive. I sometimes joke. You know, I love Vivaldi and Haydn and Mozart. Of course, I love that music. It's hard to compete with them, but I really love. Yeah, you're going to hear my piece, then you're going to hear Vivaldi. They're going to ask why did you hear Vivaldi? But I really love what we call ancient music. I love old music, and I think in the same way I love Arabic music and Indian music, not so much what we call folk music, but you know, those areas of the world have their own classical traditions that are older than our classical instrumental tradition, actually. And what I liked music before tonality was born. I sometimes joke with my students that around the year 1300, people lost the essence of music. And since then, we're like wandering in the dark. If you ever listen to any of those masses from the early 14th century, composers we don't hear anymore, or don't listen to anymore, there's some purity in their music because they really almost use the scales like we use speech. And so I find it to be very immediate. And something happens when you start introducing chromaticism, like the not just the white notes on the piano, but really when you're singing it, you gain a lot of color, but you lose some naturalness. So for me, I always like going back there to look for, well, what's natural for me? Like, what would be if I never learned how to write or how would I hear music? So for me, that's why I go back there so much, because it sort of frees me up from like 700 years of musical tradition that sort of goes a little bit against our nature all the time. Even though, again, I'm a huge fan of that music, but I sort of feel like I have to go back to really find my way. I want to find my way beyond that point.
It's fascinating because Avner and I were talking yesterday, and you know, programming is such a fascinating thing. And we were talking about this program, and he mentioned to me actually, you know, that Vivaldi's Winter from the Four Seasons was part of the inspiration for this piece. And when I programmed it, I didn't know it. It was, as we say, a happy coincidence. But something about that feeling of, you know, that we all know so much about these days, right? Of bitter cold in places, and talk about just that feeling that she wanted to convey.
So yeah, there's an actual quote from the Winter in Perfect Innocence. So when it comes to the concert, you'll actually be able to hear it is a quote, so it's not an influence, it's a literal quote. And Vivaldi writes there, it's like, after all the winter, which we can all identify with now, winter, winter, cold, 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 he writes in the music, the warm wind from the south. And that's the point, and I quoted that musical idea. And I just remember that it was like, I remember looking at the Vivaldi score and feeling like, yeah, we need a little bit of warmth. Like, it's so cold that we need that little bit of warmth. And in the context of this piece, you know, I don't even know how to explain it in words, but it was so, I felt like it was so needed. Like, what do we do after an event like this? We need a little bit of those southern winds to warm us up. And today is the best day to talk about this. I desperately need southern.
So these won't be the warm southern winds, but you will get a sense of what the beginning of winter sounds like. And so on. How many of you recognize that music? When we get to the main section, made very famous by a BMW commercial? Yeah, that's it. So, right? I think many people, Avner, would be interested in your process. How do you go about writing a new work? What do you do at the very beginning when you're composing a piece?
After I stop freaking out. You know, I'm asked this question often, and there's really not one answer other than I get immersed in what this piece is. It just becomes like a complete obsession of mine. And until I finish the piece, I can't let it go. So it will become everything to me. And anything in my life, and anything that I read, and anything that I hear and look at, it all like relates to what I'm trying to create. And I think that's the most like general thing I can say about it.